Hi, my name is Craig Peterson, and I am the Associate Conference Minister for Congregational Development for the Central Atlantic Conference. And one of our goals in the conference this year is to work really hard to try to better connect our local churches and their people to the experience of General Synod. And so one of the ways we've tried to do that this year is to end some of the days of General Synod by talking to a few of our delegates who've been there and on the floor. So tonight I'm going to begin by asking our two delegates if they take a moment and introduce themselves by giving you their name, their local church, the association in which their church is located, and how many General Synods they've been to before. So Bella, would you go ahead and get us started this evening and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the Reverend Dr. Bella Winters. I'm the pastor of St. Mark's United Church of Christ in Hampstead, Maryland. I'm in the Catoctin Association, and this is my second synod. The first one was virtual due to our COVID situation, so I'm happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Reverend Dr. Winters. And Simona, would you go next?
Yeah, my name is Simona. I'm from First Congregational Church in Montclair, New Jersey. I'm a layperson, and this is my first synod.
Exciting. And in our conversations, we've been fortunate to have delegates from 4 of our 5 associations from throughout the conference. And tonight, we're hearing from Catoctin and the New Jersey associations. So I asked the delegates as they went through their day and evening to think about a few questions. And the first question I want to ask them as they think back on what has been, what did you see or experience at General Synod that gave you hope for the future, not just of our denomination, but of the world? So whoever would like to answer that first can jump right in.
I will. I would say the one thing that really gave me hope was the fact that UCC as a whole talks about the real hard issues that seems like no other denomination wants to speak about. When they're talking about LGBTQIA rights, when they're talking about even white supremacy, white privilege, and when they're talking about the racial divide. And they're willing to start in their own home, their own backyard, and be able to be the catalyst to say, hey, we believe that this is not the church, not the way that God wants us to treat one another. And so they're really focused on bringing up the real tough issues and acting upon them.
Thank you, Bella. We have a new delegate joining us, Darryl, who will introduce himself in a moment as we're taping. But Simona, would you go next before I ask Darryl to introduce himself? And we're talking about the first question of what we saw that gave us hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Reverend kind of talked about kind of the spirit of UCC and our willingness to take on issues. Something I really admired just behind the scenes is how compassionately we were able and respectfully debate almost. It was really refreshing seeing that there was a platform for everyone to be heard when there was maybe heightened emotions. People were apologizing in a very dignified way, which is something that we don't see too often. So I really just enjoyed have everyone feeling safe enough to say what they want to say, and that the process was respectful in spirit and in accessibility physically. So I really thought that was awesome.
Great starts. Darryl, if you're available and able to, what I've asked each of our delegates to do tonight is to introduce themselves by giving their name, their local church, the association their church is located, and how many General Synods they've been to before. So if you wouldn't mind, Darryl, go ahead and jump in and help us with that. And while Darryl's getting situated,
sorry about that. I couldn't get the thing to unzoom. I mean to unopen anyway, unmute.
No problem.
I'm Darryl Moch. I am in the Potomac Association, and I have been serving at Inner Light Ministries UCC for 15 years, and I will now be the designated pastor at UCC Fredericksburg in Virginia, about an hour outside of DC. This is my 1.5, I guess, 1.230, one-third Synod. I attended parts of the Synod when it was in Baltimore some years ago, around the same time that my church first joined in with UCC, maybe within the year or so after we joined in, and I did my first boundary awareness series at General Synod, and attended a few odds and end things, but not a lot of the business and not a lot of the other stuff. I really wasn't aware of all of what Synod was and what was going on at the time. So this is my first full Synod, and I absolutely love it.
Great. And that's it.
What was the other part of the question?
Actually, you've taken care of it all. I'll ask our final delegate, Yuli, if she'd take a moment. What we're doing as we begin is introducing ourselves by giving our name, our local church, the association it's located, and then how many General Synods you've been to before. Oh, and if you could unmute yourself, that'd be great.
My name is Yuli. I am the pastor at Packanack Community Church in Wayne, New Jersey. I'm part of the New Jersey Association. And this is my fourth Synod and third time as a delegate.
Excellent. And Simona and Bella had answered the first of 4 questions this evening. I'll give Yuli and Darryl a chance if they want to talk about the first question as well. And that first question is, what did we experience the past several days that gave us hope, both in general for the world, but even more specifically for our own denomination, the United Church of Christ?
Darryl, if you have you can jump in first if you'd like. Yeah.
Sure. I think what mainly gave me hope the most this is uncomfortable. Was the gathering, the being togetherness of it. Seeing a lot of faces, and I think the being together dispels, at least to some degree for me, some of the, I don't want to call it full-on anxiety, but angst or concern about inclusion, about being accepted, about how white the church is or isn't. And I reflected today that there's a lot more, and maybe it's just how delegates were picked, but it showed to me a larger amount of representation and potential diversity that's in our denomination, stronger than I may have perceived it before. So it's in the way that we've interacted with each other, people speaking, their kindness, and meeting people that you didn't know, and sitting next to folks arbitrarily because we weren't assigned to do that, right? We just kind of end up doing it, especially because I'm not a delegate, so I'm not sitting up at the table where you all are. So out in the general audience, we sit wherever, and you get a chance to potentially speak to some other folks. It's big enough that you didn't have to, but so I enjoyed that, just the nature of being together. I think I heard some other comments earlier about the voting and the process. I think the way that we handled business and did things was also encouraging, but the biggest thing that encouraged me was the lack of the inclusion of the fifth string. I've been talking about that for a while now, and the ease at which the things that cause us to, the rest of the world to be oppressed, how easy it felt that we made decisions to fight against those oppressions, from white supremacy to the digital divide, and lifting up other justice issues. It felt natural for this body to do that, and that was also encouraging. I have decided pretty much that I don't ever want to go anywhere outside of UCC. If this continues. Okay.
Thank you, Reverend Darryl. How about you, Lee? What was hopeful for you?
Definitely a lot on that list, but the one thing that comes to mind in this moment is similar to Darryl, just witnessing the gathering body, and especially the intergenerational aspect of the those of us who are gathered, and specific, like Darryl, yesterday morning, I assume it was your daughter who was there sitting at the table at breakfast, but seeing her with you made me want to bring my kids, and then then I became more conscious of the younger folk that were there, and the diversity in age, and the way that we the conversation wasn't split up by different. I mean, there's youth synod and they have their own thing going on, and the childcare as well, but there were moments of interaction, and even the younger delegates and how they have interacted with the older delegates. And I mean, really, age hasn't seemed to mean anything. All ages are welcome at the table, and all voices of
Great.
all ages. So that's a hopeful thing for me.
Absolutely, yeah. So we've talked a little bit about some signs of hope, and of course, no institution or denomination is perfect. There's always edges or room for growth. I'll open it to whatever of the four delegates that would like to reflect, but I'm wondering, as we sat together, where are some signs for growth where we might be able to do better in the future?
One of the things that I took notice of was that we had a resolution about our local churches really coming up against fostering an environment that creates, sort of a divide, a racial divide, as far as, trying to, let the local churches be a safe haven to sort of come up against supremacy and racial division. And when we vote on the resolution, even though it unanimously passed, there was about still 14% that said no. Mm-hmm. And I thought that would have been an opportunity for us to really maybe do a task force and maybe talk to those individuals that said no, and find out what their concerns were, what were their issues to where that they felt that was not part of the message or the teaching or the doctrines of Jesus Christ, and how can we come to some type of, sit at the table and reason together. That's the whole idea of the Senate, and try to find out the concerns and how we could better be greater witnesses to one another in the love of Jesus Christ.
I love that. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Winters. Who'd like to go next and share their experience of a growing edge in our church?
Yeah. Since this is my first synod and I'm still kind of getting used to things, I guess I was going in I don't want to say going in like this, but kind of being these are all, for the most part, great resolutions. I'm so excited. These are definitely going to pass. These are definitely going to be implemented right away. This is great, fantastic. Which, obviously, if I thought about a little bit more, that wouldn't be a realistic thought. But I didn't. But today, during one of them, someone shared that they were not voting for one, and they were frustrated because the same issue has been reoccurring, maybe in different titles and forms, but the general issue has been talked about year after year after year, and it was just very frustrating. So that really spoke to me, because that would be entirely frustrating, and I want these, if they have the blessing of everyone in the church, I want them to be embraced in action, not just here. So I think that's kind of where I found a little bit of sorrow, but I remain hopeful.
Thank you so much, Simona. Reverend Darryl, how about you? Any growing edge that you experienced?
There's a couple. One I learned and I wasn't on the chain of information where the children's childcare area kind of got dropped and kind of canceled and then rebooted. And I'm grateful that it got rebooted, but I'm also grateful that there was a space inside the plenary where children could be, and that was staffed by folks that were always willing to let the kids be there, and that was really great. That thought, but the I guess for me, the lack of thought, I don't know if it's a lack, whatever happened that causes that. Is a awareness that I think we need to broaden in terms of focus and people that we want to be engaged that may have small children, even if both parents are there and engaged in as delegates or engaged in other ways within the work of the church. We don't want to have people not coming because they can't find and keep their kids for a week, or whatever, or be away that far, wherever it is from their kids, even if someone is keeping them like they're at a camp or something. That doesn't make it safe for you to be 1,000 miles away, right? So that's an area, I think, of growth, of understanding how do we incorporate, but I also would like to see more youth and young adults and children involved in the worship and in the overall work of it. And I think a goal for me, if I had access to people at National, was to do what we've done in the CAC and in Potomac, which is to include business as a part of worship, so they're not separate. And that that the business is worship, for the church. The business of God is also the business of worshiping. So that's a good steward portion of our worship, right? And the only other thing I think you all have mentioned is around those edges where diversity or inclusion are still a fringe or not so much embraced by folks. And there's a part of me that says, as the church, we want to continue extending extravagant welcome, but there's the point where we have to move on, and we have to be willing to say there are some people that are not going to continue down this road with us, and rather than drag them along, hoping they'll see light, we may need to let them go so they can go and have the experiences that they need, and pray that they'll come back again when they've had those experiences. But there are those people that are who are the way they are, and that may or may not ever change. And no matter how much we drag them along and they stick with us, we waive the support of dangling of the dollars the church may have to support them in whatever their work may be, which is what makes them hold on. I think that those dollars would be better spent with places that want it and want to do what we're actually doing and moving in the direction of the church, versus trying to hold on to people because it's been our tradition to have folks with us.
Great. We're halfway through the questions, and you all are doing a beautiful job of reflection and bringing out the best of Synod. So the third question is kind of an open-ended one, which I don't want to interpret in any particular way, but that third question is, what surprised you this week at Synod? It could be positively or negatively, or just what surprised you? I'm curious to hear.
I thought it was very well thought out. It was a beautiful production. I would put it up against any other type of convention that I've been to in years. Beautiful setting, very open and inviting. And so I just think that overall, the national setting and all those that are involved have really thought everything through, and they really did a fantastic job of presenting Synod to us.
Wow, thank you for that, Reverend Dr. Winters. How about Yuli? What surprised you?
So I am not a fan whatsoever of Robert's rule of order. I hate that structure of organizing decision making. I like more organic kind of consensus or conversation work. But I was super, I don't know if surprise is the best word, but just super impressed or just taken aback by just how detailed today especially was in terms of all the rules and that Bob, the moderator, he who has that gift to make something like this exciting and fun and like lighthearted? Like that's truly a gift that he has. And so it was just kind of, so it was just interesting to witness and be a part of.
Excellent. Reverend Darryl, how about you? What was it that happened these last few days that may have surprised you?
Surprise. I think I was surprised at the ease at which this, when I talk to people, because they don't know what a synod is, I just say church convention. I will say the ease at which everything flowed.
Huh?
Without, like, our registration was actually done. It was done right. In fact, they actually had a name tag for Princess. And because she's not in program, I thought they weren't going to do it because they actually didn't charge me for her when I thought they were. And so there was a name tag for her, which surprised me. But it was just the flow of from the registration process. And I'm only talking about the on-site stuff. The off-site, the registration prior to was horrendous and awful. And I mean, not awful, but it just wasn't easy. And knowing what was going on and how to register and getting all the things you needed to get. And some of the expense was not good, right?
Yeah.
But being here flowed so easily, you know. I wish some of it didn't start so early. I would not be as mad about going a little later each of those earlier days instead of starting so early at 6:45 or 6:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning every single day. But it is what it is. So
excellent. Simona, how about you? What if anything surprised you these days?
Yeah. Besides what I spoke about during our last question, nothing really like surprised me too much. I mean, I tried to go in just seeing how it all like goes and flows. So I think I was just pleasantly reassured that the UCC is UCC everywhere. So.
Oh, wow. Great way of putting that. So our final question tonight is to invite you, and this is sort of a challenge because I know you've accumulated many, many, many memories, but if you were to think of one that's particularly special or sticks out for you that you're comfortable sharing, what would that memory be?
One of the memories that I have, I'm sorry.
Oh.
One of the memories that I have is that we know that Reverend Dr. John Dorhauer is, going off to be a pastor, but I think that what sticks in my memory is I had the opportunity to meet him in some other work that I do with another UCC organization, and to get a chance to see and just give him a hug and let him know how much I appreciate just his kindness, his leadership, and to see that UCC just has, I believe, just great leaders in the organization, and to see people like Tracy Blackman and Reverend, Dr. Karen Georgia Thomas and all those others to really just kind of step up and know that UCC will be very well taken care of. So it was just the leadership as a whole, and especially being able to just spend some time with Dr. Dorhauer.
Thank you, Dr. Winters, for that. Who'd like to share their memory next?
I could go. Yeah, I really enjoyed the worshiping with everyone, but specifically the music ministry. It was great having like a whole live band. And then, of course, everyone singing together, hearing 600 people sing is pretty great.
Yeah, what a great memory. How about Reverend Darryl or Reverend Julie?
I think for me, the memory I'm right now, you see my daughter is here with me. I think that is one of the memories that I would carry, that she was here with me at this particular synod. And as I dig deeper into my life with UCC, it is a life that she'll grow up in, and will be able to look back on these days when the first African-American woman was elected to be the general minister and president, when there were all of the leadership of the main leadership of the church are African-American women. Right now, where there are a lot of African-American people and people of color and people of other who are not people of color, who are also sharing leadership and responsibility for the growth of the church. So she's actually, for the first time, I guess, in my life, and now it's new for her, seeing what truly may look like a multicultural experience happening and unfolding in her lifetime. And I hope that grows more, and we find more ways for more men who men have always been in, but now we don't want to go the opposite way of just eliminating all the men just because women have been excluded for so long. And I understand the value of having women in the positions they are. So I'm hoping that we'll find more men that will be supportive of them in those roles, who can serve in roles underneath them and not feel any kind of way about it, if that makes sense, but also that they will step up in other areas across gender, across sexual orientation, across age. I'd like to see a lot more younger people. And that was so heartening to see so many young people as delegates, right? And so I think that this is becoming, you get to see this as the church that we are hoping that it would be, the church for all people. And so my memory is that my daughter and I are getting to experience this together as a church for all people. And that is something that she will always know for her, that there is a place for her should she ever choose to have any involvement at any level within the church, that there is a place for her.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And how about Reverend Yuli? What's your memory?
I definitely won't forget just seeing Reverend Dr. Karen Georgia Thompson up there with her family that was present, and like the pictures of her parents. That was a powerful moment for me. Again, multiple generations up there, the history, connecting, back to history and looking forward, but being, present in this particular time.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
And I was thinking, I haven't answered the other questions myself, but I thought to close, I would share a memory that really addresses all of the other questions I ask about things that give me hope, room for growth, all of that. And it really, for me, perfectly encaptures what the United Church of Christ is about. So there was a point today where Reverend Dr. John Dorhauer, who was finishing his term as president, read a resolution of apology on behalf of the United Church of Christ. And that resolution had to do with the fact that we have forgotten or buried for years, decades, the legacy of the Fifth Stream, which is the Afro-Christian congregation movement. And so what happened was he read the declaration, and then there were other items on the agenda. So we moved forward into the other business. But then what was most fascinating is a lay delegate from the floor spoke truth to the power and said, wait a minute, this is a significant moment. We can't just go on to other business. And she said, and we also need to allow all of the delegates on behalf of the church to stand in solidarity, those who have benefited from that privilege or the exclusion. And so we stopped the agenda, and one delegate brought the whole body into action, and it took that apology to a whole different level. And so for me, it was that the beauty and the work and movement of the Holy Spirit in that moment that took what could have been just a formal read statement and helped it become lived in new ways. And so I'll carry that memory with me a long time, because it captures the best of what the United Church of Christ can be. And since it's our last evening together, I want to kind of close by, I think it was Reverend Dr. Winters who alluded to this, but One of the challenges in our tradition is that while our delegates have been faithful and gathered for 5 days and worked on resolutions, the reality in our denomination is that none of this work can be imposed or enforced on our local churches. Each and every one of our churches must make a decision to take what has happened here and to consider it and to look at it and find out how it can incorporate what has happened for themselves. And sadly, some churches may choose to ignore or to not tend to this information. But our passion here in the Central Atlantic Conference is to share as many of the resources and experiences and thoughts as a way of motivating our local churches not to ignore this, but to really take it in and live into the resolutions and the spirit of General Synod. And so with that, it's been a long day for the delegates. As we heard earlier, they started at 6:30 this morning, and it's now a little after 10 p.m. So the hours have flown by as the days have. But on behalf of the local churches and people of the Central Atlantic Conference, I want to thank our delegates for the amazing ways in which you have represented us. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
And with that, we will call it a night.